let's get you a breaking update. The details that are now coming in of the Indian diplomats who have now been alerted by the agencies to be on high alert, fearing violent protest in Canada. Around 20 pro-Khalistani groups have launched death to Indian diplomats and balkanized campaign calling to shut down of Indian missions globally and terming the Indian missions as terror houses. Even when it comes to terrorists, and Pannu and the SFJ Central Council stated that consulates that are breeding ground of terror cells who assassinated, as they have been calling, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And the call that has now been made for the Indian consulates must be shut down to safeguard the Khalistan referendum campaigners. And that is what is now being put across, and the propaganda that is now being spread across by this terrorist Gurparwan Singh Pannu is concerned, because already the action against him that has been taking place on the Indian soil, as far as the properties that are now being confiscated, and the NIA action that has been taking place. However, the call that has now been made, the Indian diplomats hereby have been advised to be on high alert. This is coming across as far as India and Canada relations that have been strained over the statements that have been made by the Canadian Prime Minister as well on part of the Defense Minister of Canada. Let us go across now to Priyank to help us understand the call that has now been made as far as the Indian diplomats who are in Canada, one of them also being expelled on part of the call that was made by Canada. What exactly is the threat now coming to them? So this threats, that is, and direct threats that have now been issued as far as the banned organization Seeks for Justice is concerned, and the leader Pannu is concerned, who seems to be making that call. As far as the diplomats who have been there working in those consulates at the High Commission there in Canada, this call that has now been made, as they have been terming those Indian missions as terror houses. Pannu has been saying that the Indian consulates in Canada are apparently breeding grounds of terror cells who assassinated Nijjar. This is exactly when it comes to the direct call that has been made, and the line that was also taken by the Canadian Prime Minister, what he had called as allegations of potential involvement of Indian government. However, he continues to say credible allegations to credible evidence, but Canada so far has failed to provide any sort of credible proof to back those allegations, to back those statements that are now being made, not just by the Canadian Prime Minister, but also when it comes to their Canadian Defense Minister as well. We'll talk about, as far as the Canadian government is concerned, because this is for the first time ever since the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who blamed India, alleging its involvement in the killing of Khalistani terrorist Nijjar in June this year. Canada now says it has credible evidence to back its claim. Canadian Defense Minister, in a TV interview, Bill Blair, has been saying that they are deeply concerned by the credible evidence that they have received and the intelligence that they have been privy to, at the same time also asking and seeking cooperation on part of India.
We've had this allegation that Indian intelligence agents carried out a murder here in Canada, a hit on a Canadian citizen, and your government came out and actually spoke about it, which surprised a lot of people. As a police officer, are you at all concerned that disclosing that kind of information in public could jeopardize the investigation or the prosecution of the people who committed this murder?
Well, first of all, Mercedes, we are deeply concerned by the credible evidence that we have received and intelligence that we have been privy to that caused us to be deeply concerned. And at the same time, as a former police officer and certainly as a parliamentarian, we are concerned about the integrity of the criminal investigation. It's a very important criminal investigation currently being conducted by the RCMP, and I will be very cautious and need to be very cautious about how we discuss that matter and the intelligence that we are acting on, in order not to in any way interfere with that investigation. It needs to proceed. We have reached out, of course, to the Indian government. We've spoken to our allies, and we've asked for all the support that is necessary to make sure that justice and the truth can be determined in this case.
We go across to Priyank now, because Priyank, over the call that has been made as many of those Indian diplomats in Canada, and there were certain posters that were also put up calling for assassination, Canadian government asking them to be put down, but this is a direct threat, a direct call to assassinate Indian diplomats that have been made on the Canadian soil.
Yes, certainly, and all the Indian agencies here are also on high alert, keeping a close watch on what could be the result of this protest, which has been called on 3 cities. Vancouver, Ottawa are the 2 prime locations where there has been call of the massive protests, and that too has been given by the pro-Khalistani organization. Recently, we saw that the SFJ's head had also given a call where he had stated that the Hindu Indians should also leave from the Canada, and it's a land which has been developed over the period of time by the members of the Sikh community. So these kind of hate propaganda material which is already available on social media, and the funeral ceremony and all the prayer ceremony which has been organized by them for the Nijjar, it's certainly a highlighter that there could be a massive protest. Looking at what have happened here, the agencies have already alerted the Indian diplomats to at least refrain from taking out going out in public too much, because there is a possibility that these people who want to march towards the Indian High Commission and all these councillors can create a big kind of trouble. The pro-Khalistani organization has already taken out their voices against India, where they have called that this protest will be their death to India. So these kind of propaganda machinery which is already available on social media platform and being circulated among the pro-Khalistani groups, which are certainly a dominating factor in the politics of Canada also, could result into a major situation. That's why the agencies are keeping a close monitoring on any kind of suspicious social media propaganda material which is coming out through Canada. That's why they are also keeping a close watch and a clean observation here in the country also,
so
wherever
diplomats
they have found that
residing in Canada who now put on high alert.